Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Today, we are celebrating the life and work of the one and only Beverlee McKinsey. I'm incredibly thankful that Beverlee's son, director Scott McKinsey, will be joining us today, along with a few other familiar faces you might recognize. Before we start talking to them, let me share a little early history with you all. Beverlee McKinsey was born in Beverly Magruder in McAlester, Oklahoma on August 9th, 1935. She graduated from the University of Oklahoma in 1956 with a bachelor's degree in drama, of course. She began her professional career in New York, where she understudied the lead role of Corey in the original Broadway production of Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park, and performed the role opposite Robert Redford several times. She also performed on the London stage in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, starring Uta Hagen and Arthur Hill. McKinsey moved to television in 1970 when she landed the contract role on Love is a Many Splendored Thing. 2 years later, she made a brief appearance as Emma Frame on Another World, and so impressed the writers that they subsequently cast her in a very different role. In December of 1972, Beverlee joined Another World full-time as a scheming and manipulative Iris Carrington. Her character proved to be so popular that she was made the star of the soap spinoff Texas, which debuted on August 4th, 1980. McKinsey remains one of two actresses to be given star billing on a soap opera, and she received 4 Daytime Emmy nominations for her work as Iris. After a hiatus from daytime, Gail Cobb, then the executive producer of Guiding Light, lured McKinsey back to join the cast of the CBS show. In February of 1984, she took on the role of wealthy matriarch Baroness Alexandra Spaulding von Helkine. The one-of-a-kind actress created another one-of-a-kind character in Alex, who is driven by her love, hate, and fierce competition with her brother Alan. She played love and friendship with so many of the men in Springfield, including Fletcher, Roger Thorpe, A.C. Mallet, and she was a vulnerable and loving mother and aunt to lost and found twins Lujack and Nick, and her nephews Phillip and Alan Michael Spaulding. On August 4th, 1992, after taping what would be her final scene as Alexandra, McKinsey shocked the world of daytime when she took advantage of an out in her contract and abruptly left Guiding Light. Her last television appearance was on General Hospital in 1994, and we lost her on May 2nd, 2008, when she passed away from complications from a kidney transplant. Michael Logan on Beverlee says, as any soap opera reporter will tell you, there are almost as many juicy scandals going on behind the scenes as there are on screen. But in all my years in the business, none will ever compare to the day Beverlee McKinsey, who for my money is the greatest actress ever to grace daytime drama, took a hike from Guiding Light. Connie Pasalakwa Heyman, who was Marlena de la Croix in Soap Opera Weekly on Beverlee. Chills, thrills, guts, and tears. As the ultimate showstopper, there is no other. Alan Carter on Beverlee. How many actresses still have fans debating which role was her best, decades after she stopped playing both of them? Jonathan Reiner on Beverlee. Quite simply the gold standard for acting, soap, and otherwise. And Mimi Torchin on Beverlee. Beverlee wasn't only a ballsy actress with a phenomenal range, she was a mercurial star who was famously press shy, but when she did speak, we hung on her every word. And boy, did we all. Today, we have 4 gentlemen here who were lucky enough to spend time working, laughing, and learning with the legendary and sorely missed Beverlee McKinsey. Please welcome to the Locher Room, Grant Aleksander, Jay Hammer, Vincent Irizarry, and Beverlee's son, Scott McKinsey. Vincent, Jay, Scott.
Hello, everybody.
And there's Jay. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
thank
Jane.
you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Scott, thank you for, giving us permission to do this. And,
Of course.
as I said backstage, the fans, we're really excited to honor your mom. Grant, Vincent, Jay, do you remember the first time you met her?
It's not my phone.
Not my phone.
Somebody has an answering machine still, is that right? Is that my beeper? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Alan. Go ahead. What were you asking?
Do you all remember the first time, Vincent, Grant, and Jay, that you met Beverlee?
I met her on the set of Texas.
That's right.
You met her on the set in Texas. Oh, wow. Great.
That was before GL. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I worked with Berkeley on the set. I worked with Berkeley on Texas also.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I wasn't aware of that. I probably remembered it from back then, but I didn't remember that, Jenny. Wow.
Did your characters cross on Texas?
No, just backstage.
I personally, for me, it's strange because I wasn't a soap watcher at all when I got the role on Guiding Light. I didn't watch any of the soaps, and I do remember though when I was told that Beverlee was coming on to play my mother, everybody was all abuzz about it and very excited. And I honestly, I didn't know who she was because I didn't watch soaps at all. And all the other actors, people in production was like, oh my gosh, she's like an icon. And she's like, not only was she on Another World, but then they took her character, Pam Long, recreated her character on Texas. And she was the first person that had her name above the title of the show as an actor on soaps. And I was like, wow, that's fantastic. So she's really very special. And when she came on and we met, it was like we hit it off immediately. I adored her. And they wrote such great story for us in the beginning, especially in the beginning, to develop the characters and the relationship, the animosity of my character towards her, because I believe that she had abandoned me as a kid. And every time I worked with Beverlee, I felt like it was just fireworks, and largely due to her. I mean, she was such a consummate professional and such a brilliant actress. Everything that she brought to every scene all the time was just all 110%. It's beautiful to work opposite her. As a young actor, it was a real learning experience. I felt like every time I was working with her, it was like a master class, in acting for a young actor.
I bet. Grant?
Yeah, much like Vince, I did not know Beverlee or of Beverlee. All I knew was that there was a special sort of buzz going around the studio about the new person that was coming in, and what they were likely to mean to the show. And it was one of the few times that the pre-billing was correct.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The old studio on 26th Street. In the old studio on 26th Street, where she made her entrance to the show, in the lobby, there was quite a large loft-like lobby, and they began construction on a large room, like a very large rectangular-shaped room. And coming in from the street, one day past the construction of it, somebody said, "What is this? What's going on here?" One of the actors said, and Chris Burnell said, "Beverlee McKinsey's dressing room."
Yes.
So Scott, do you remember the first time you met Beverlee? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, 61 years ago or something like that.
61 years ago.
What do you remember about your mom and what she did for a living, like as a little kid, before you knew you'd be following sort of?
Yeah. Well, you talked about her degree in drama and theater at Oklahoma. She also, in order to get out at the same time as my dad, she graduated a year early, and she double majored. She had a major in English and teaching, and so she always had as sort of a backup the ability to teach, and she did pick up assignments every once in a while, which were in her mind awful because they were never recurring. They were just temporary. They get a call that morning, somebody's called in sick, can you come in and fill in? But there wasn't that much of that. A little bit in California when we moved there. She had done her theater work in New York, and she had done some commercial spots in New York, and she was aching to get on the big screen. And so we went to California in '67, and for by all accounts, I mean, she really did quite well by getting maybe 10 guest shots a year, or 8 to 12 guest shots a year for the 2-3 years we were out there, and yet that doesn't really maintain a living, as much as that sounds like a really good way to start a career, it's barely pulling it together. So when she got the call to come to New York, I think it was for John Convoy, to go to Splendid Thing. You know, she was on the next plane to give that a try. It was a regular job, and then that ran for about a year, and then I came back and went to school while she was in the middle of that run, and then for a year she wasn't working, and it was you know, there we were, like, subletting a rental in New York City, and she of course was putting me in the best schools always, and she'd scrape together whatever it took. But I mean, you know, people assume that she always had a rocket career, and it was really the soaps that launched her fame, certainly, and I really think she found her calling. She wanted to have a shot at the brass ring of film stardom. But I think, you know, to be able to play so many different aspects of a character and to, you know, have the movie never end the way they do in soaps, you know, for the characters, I think really fulfilled her. And she wouldn't have admitted that immediately, but I mean, once she started playing Iris and feeling like she'd found a part that was hers and hers alone, and was so exciting and so psychologically broken, you know, she really found her way, and for that I was really happy for her, because she was always searching, you know, for what is my career going to hold, and the fame didn't matter so much as what the work was like. You know, she'd get up and get in that car to go to Brooklyn, you know, with Paul Stevens and Douglas Watson, and all of them smoking their cigarettes in the middle of winter with the windows down, and telling jokes in the back of the car, and you know, and we're talking about like 5 a.m, you know, and through snowstorms and all that. And to her, it was like she'd gone back to college or something. You know, that she was just like in her element. And
it's incredible. You know, we're in the intro about one of 2 daytime stars to ever have top billing, and the first was before her on All My Children. So she was really the last person to ever get that on Texas.
Well, if I may, it was funny when she got the call from Paul Rausch that they had decided, first End of the World, as you might recall, had gone from an hour to an hour and a half, and it will never be done again. It was awful. They were, you know, she was doing 12-page scenes in the prologue, and you know, and they used to tape live on tape in those days, and they were just about a mutiny out there in Brooklyn. And so now they had this extra half hour when they went back to an hour on Another World, and Paul sold the idea of the spinoff of Texas to the network. And so they wrote the Bible, they had the commitment from the network, they had everything ready to go. And Paul called my mom and said, so we're doing a show, and it's going to be a spinoff about your character, starring your character. And she said, oh, really? Maybe we should start talking about what I'd like to have, if that's the case.
Nice negotiating position to be in.
Yeah. And so she and Noel Silverman, our friend Noel Silverman, sat down and wrote a list, you know, about that long, and had a laugh about the last 20 that they were going to let go of, you know, private rocket ships to Brooklyn. But I mean, she got that credit, and she was able to have a schedule that allowed her to get home and have dinner with her family every night, and you know, not have sort of a backward schedule of working last one day and first another day, and you know, those kinds of rough things that happen for people. And yeah, that was a good gig.
That was a good gig, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you guys have, Jay, Vincent, Grant, do you have a favorite scene that you recall working with Beverlee that you just remember?
Wow, so many scenes. I had so many scenes with her. I mean, because I've seen it over and over again at different times. People post it on YouTube. It was early on. It was like one of our first scenes in my then bedroom where I was living as Lujack, which was a very explosive scene between us, where I was resentful of the fact that I believed that she had abandoned me. But I also will never forget the last scenes that I had with Beverlee as Nick McHenry. it was interesting because the buildup of it was a whole year of the story where Nick was not accepting her version of who I was, that I was actually her twin son that was taken from her by my father, and that I was adopted by the McHenrys. And I would not believe it because my parents were journalists and they believed in integrity and truth, the whole thing. And but after a whole year of that story, I finally acknowledged it. And we had these beautiful scenes where I called her mom for the first time, and it was very emotional between us. And it was beautiful, but it was a strange ending last moment because I had no knowledge, nobody did, that Beverlee was leaving the show at that time. So we had finished the scenes, and the crew, everybody wished Beverlee well. She was going on a 6-week vacation. And I went and hugged her and said, have a great time. And she said to the crew, she said, thank you so much. I just want to thank all of you. I've had an amazing time here, but I won't be coming back after vacation. I'm like, what? And then I'm like, Beverlee, what are you talking about? She said, yeah, no, I'm giving my notice right now. She had a 6-week notice clause in her contract. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, does anybody know this? She goes, no, I'm going to tell them right now.
in the interview, Vincent, she did. In the interview with Vince, she did with Michael Logan, she spoke about specifically in that interview not wanting to tell you because it would have changed because the dynamics of that scene if you knew she was leaving.
Possibly, that could very well be true. But it was a shocker to Bruce Barry and Bobby Kochman, who was the producer and the director of the show, when they came walking into the studio to wish her a great vacation. And they come in and they're like, Beverlee, with the whole production, everybody from the booth came out to wish her well on her vacation. Like, Beverlee, have a great vacation. And I'm like, Bruce, she's not coming back. The crew said, no, she's not coming back. And they're like, what are you talking about? She's coming back. She's going on vacation. I said, no, she's not coming back. And Beverlee says, no, I'm not coming back. I'm giving my notice right now. And they're like, what? That was it. It was my last scene with her, so I will never forget those scenes. And I'm happy that we ended on such a high. It was a beautiful last scenes with Beverlee.
But I love that she really thought about that and not sharing it with you because of the, Scott said, like, the work mattered to her.
Right.
She didn't want to affect that.
I know. They were beautiful, beautiful scenes. And I just adored Beverlee.
I just watched the scene before this of her telling you she's your mom as Lujack, which is which is a great scene as well.
Yeah.
Grant, do you have a favorite that stands out that you remember?
I have two actually, and they're really different, but they both really illustrate, I think, just how special Bev was. The first one. God, Philip was in love with Beth so many different times. I can't remember which incarnation this was, but it was, and Vince, you can relate to this. But there was one set of scenes where Philip had rediscovered Beth one time, and it was in Alexander's bedroom, and they were really energetic scenes, actually really nicely written, beautifully written scenes. And it occurred to me to try to rip off one of my favorite beats from one of my favorite performances, which is Alistair Sim in A Christmas Carol, and where when Ebenezer has had the epiphany at the end, he goes and stands on his head on a chair, and I wanted to try it, and Beverlee had this way of making you believe you could do things. She was this huge net that would just be there for you. And if you failed, it would be okay. And if you succeeded, it would be even better. But she made you feel like you could do anything because she was just so solid in every way. Mm-hmm. And the other ones that I remember were shortly after my parents had died, I had to do some scenes about Alan, where Alan was supposedly very, very sick. And it was just a bad time, and I was, emotionally very raw. And in a way that I'm not even sure I can describe, she just put a steady hand on me. And just literally got me through it. You know, we've all been in those situations at different times where you're just emotionally, you're just on the edge. And it was only a couple of months since my folks had died, and they had written these very nice scenes. But I was a little uncertain about whether or not I was going to actually be able to do a professional job with them. And from the moment I got on the set with her and rehearsing the scenes and stuff, she just kind of put a hand on me, and it's again difficult to articulate, but she gave me some of her strength and got me through.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And for you, Jay?
Well, I have several, but my first memory of Beverlee, as I said, was on Texas, specifically in the dry rehearsal room early in the morning. And I did not know about Beverlee's pre-show ritual she had about staying home the night before, doing her nails, manicure every freaking night, the night before she would work, doing her own hair, getting to bed by 9 p.m., I think it was, maybe earlier. She set 3 alarm clocks, one by the bed, 5 minutes later, one in the bureau, she get out of bed to turn that one off, and thirdly, one in the bathroom. And she said she'd go into the bathroom and turn that one off. And she said, well, I'm here. What the hell? I'll take a pee. And she started her day every day that way. And she'd come into dry rehearsal with her hair up in curlers, her base makeup already on, dressed in cashmere and Hermes scarves around her hair. And she would stand there smoking, not talking. And she knew all her lines. All she had to do was she'd cock her head a little bit to get a direction. Stand here, move there. And if somebody fumbled their script, even while they were holding the script, she would say, what'd she say? She knew everybody's dialogue. She knew all of hers. She was off book in dry rehearsal. And I was like fascinated. And I made a point of being off book, believe me, when I was in dry rehearsal with Beverlee. And it got so good at it with us, two of us, when they started to work us together, that the crew could shoot our rehearsal. What do you call it? Dress rehearsal. They could shoot our dress rehearsals because they were so tuned up by the time we got through camera blocking. I remember that especially. But I remember the first time I had a scene with her, a scene. Beverlee was sitting at a desk and Fletcher was standing opposite her. And Fletcher wanted something from her. He wanted money. He wanted her to sign an affidavit or a check. I can't remember which it was. And she was saying, why should I? What's in it for me? What are you going to do with it? But she did it all sitting down, and she never really made eye contact with me. It was all from underneath hooded eyes and a little crook at the corner of a mouth. And she suckered the writers into writing stuff for us just by that scene. We probably never would have had storyline together if she hadn't have done that in that scene.
Wow. I love that. Scott, do you remember all that? The alarms and the nails and the...
Well, you know, we spent a lot of time in her dressing room running lines so we could tape dress rehearsals. And she was the only person I've ever known in my life who called James Earl Jones Jimmy. And one year I said, what would you like for Christmas? And she just, off the top of her head, she said, I would really like a white soup to but really walk.
I do remember that when
it was fucking hilarious.
When we would tape scenes after a great dress rehearsal, thinking I think the dress was better. I can't, and I would say to her, you know, privately at home, sometimes I'd say, you got to save some of that for the tape, you know, or ask them to tape the rehearsal, the dress, if your partners are comfortable with that. But you know, cool it with the full performance in the dress, and then 5 minutes later you got to find it again. And it didn't always come up. It was always a good performance, of course, but you know, it didn't have that electricity of the one that she'd been waiting to do for, you know, 12, 18 hours, and she couldn't pull back. She had to play it. You know, she didn't mark a scene. She played scenes. And I found that with other actors that was helpful to them in the dry rehearsal hall. You know, she was going to show you how she was going to play the scene. And I think that helped. I helped her partners. because a lot of times it's supposed to be a very exploratory process, and you know, you're coming off of 25 pages you might have done the day before, and you're just getting your feet on the ground. And she's saying, you know, but Alex is going to bring this to the party, and I think it helped a lot for her partners.
You know, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on that. I want to just say something about that, Scott. Especially for me as a young actor, this was the first TV job that I had ever had. I only did theater for like 5 or 6 years prior to this, so it was the first job. And I would say that even to this day, I hold Beverlee as at the highest level of being a constant professional. She showed me what it meant to be a professional in this industry, and I felt the same thing about Larry Gates. You know, there were veterans on these shows that I looked up to as a young actor and said, this is what it's supposed to be like. This is what you're supposed to be. This is the level of professionalism that you need to bring to the work. And it just inspired me constantly where Beverlee's concerned. And I would hold her up there. Same with like Angela Lansbury. I got a chance to work on her show years ago. And that was after 8 years of her doing that show, but she was the consummate professional. She reminded me of Beverlee in that respect. Wow. That her final scenes at the end of the show, where it's like a 5-page monologue where she ties up the whole thing, Angela Lansbury on Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
I came in early that day to sit off camera to watch her do that scene at 8 o'clock in the morning. She was not only prepared to do it, she did every take, one take, every camera shot. Excuse me, that was my. And I just was like, and I've always felt there's a trickle down effect on every show. The people that are the you know, namely the stars, the people that everybody look up to, how they are and on a level of professionalism, also in character, the people that they are to everybody on the crew trickles down to everybody else, where everybody is respectful and professional because of them. And that's how I always felt about Beverlee. She had that quality. It was fantastic.
I can imagine that if you see someone like Beverlee coming to dry rehearsal with the entire script down and knowing your lines, the next day you're going to show up knowing your lines.
Absolutely.
I would think that if you were a smart young person joining a show, one of the things Judy Evans had mentioned was one of the things she learned from Beverlee, which was how Beverlee learned her scripts backwards from Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. You know, she went backwards, and then are there things like that that she taught you guys, or that you learned from Beverlee? I mean, Jay, you just said it. You came doing knowing your script, but Grant or Vincent?
Yeah, it's definitely true.
Yeah, I thought that was optimal. When I saw Beverlee do that way back in 1980 on Texas, that seemed to be the optimal thing, to come to dry knowing your words so you could pay attention to the other actors instead of having your head down into the script, you know? But no, she never coached anybody. She never told anybody to start with Friday and work back towards Monday, or you better learn your lines, or she was never that way at all.
Grant?
Bev was, smarter and more talented and everything else than I was, but I definitely picked up from her that you were going to be better the better prepared you were. We didn't have enough time to do it as it was, so if you came in the morning and you already knew your words, you were just going to be better. You know, you're going to be a better acting partner, and you're going to be happier with the way the scenes turned out. So I tried to do that as much as I could as well.
Yeah, example.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did you say, Jay?
I just said she led by example.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that all of us, we learned an etiquette from her about what it meant to be prepared and come to work. And it was true that because of that you were so prepared with her, you could be there in the moment with her, and she just was constantly feeding you in the moment in every scene. It was just
and she came from that old school that a lot of us were lucky enough to benefit from. That most of the actors that were established on the soaps when we came in as young actors were people that had come from established theater careers, and had a certain kind of professionalism that I don't think people typically would have associated with television at the time. But when we came in, and you're working with, Beverlee McKinsey and Sharita Bauer and Larry Gates and Bill Rourke and, people like that, you don't want to be the idiot standing there, mucking up the whole thing,
Yeah. It's interesting, too, that I think what has changed significantly in daytime is that back then, our scenes were oftentimes like 10-page scenes. They were not short 2-3-page scenes, which a lot of them are today. I think that they've sort of adjusted daytime to be for people's attention span, similar to like the People magazine version of journalism. It's just like everything has to go in and out very quickly, So there are 2 or 3-page scenes, and I think for production-wise, because they're shooting them a lot faster these days. But back then, we had meaty scenes that were like 10-page, sometimes 12-page scenes. That's rare today to see that. So it was a huge undertaking to make sure that you came into work every day and know all your lines. And I can't remember once ever being with Beverlee where she ever seemed like she went up on her lines. I don't remember that ever happening, So it's a great example.
I'd have to ask you guys. I would also think that creates a bit of comfort. It's like all of a sudden it's very freeing to have that part of your work out of the way. And now you're coming in to play. Now you're coming in to actually play, and you can actually, have a laugh or two about it. It actually takes some of the heat off of the prep, I would think, right?
Absolutely, without question. I'll also say this just as a memory.
But there was a lot of fun in Beverlee at work, though. I came downstairs at the old studio one day from the studios, one flight up from, or 2 flights up, from the dressing rooms. And I came down the dressing room hallway. I yelled, "Annie Reade!" And the only door that opened where if Annie flew out was Beverlee's. For real. And another time she asked my wife and I out to dinner, and she invited us to a fancy Upper East Side restaurant Vincent used to go to, Primavera.
Yes.
On 3rd Avenue around, 81st Street or something. And she invited us to dinner, and we said, "Beverlee, what's the occasion?" She said, and my wife and I went, what's going on? We thought she was going to give us some kind of news or something. She says, "Well, actually, my accountant called me this morning. She said, 'Beverlee, you're too cheap. We need some deductions.'" My wife got a deduction from Beverlee. Another time she invited us, my wife and I, to see. Another time she invited my wife and I to see Mel Gibson, Hamlet. And there was a long line out in front of the movie theater. She said, "I'll meet you at the movie theater. I'll get the tickets." So she got the tickets. We found her in line, and she had a shopping bag with her because she had shopped. And we got in the movie theater. We got our seats. And as we all settled and the lights started on, we reached under the shopping bag and pulled out foam boxes of Chinese food for all of us. Can you imagine the odor of Chinese food in a movie theater?
That's perfect.
It was crazy.
Perfect.
Crazy.
Yeah. Scott, what was it like getting to direct your mom? And you got to direct her both at Guiding Light and General Hospital, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was amazing because when I was younger, as she was first working in the medium, I was at school when the show was on the air. We didn't have VCRs. We didn't have a way to watch a show a second time. And I only saw her work when I might be sick from school, and I'd just be laid up in bed or something with a cold, and I'd actually see her work for the first time. And then of course as I got a little bit older,
what was that like seeing her?
It was amazing because you're looking at somebody that's not your mom. I mean, you can literally hear another person's voice in there, and she's not behaving in a way that you recognize, from your personal life. And so, you get a real insight into, acting and a character, and the craft. But then as I got a little older, I was interested in working. I got bitten by the bug, and I started working in the business pretty quickly, and I quit school to do it, even though I kept my enrollment going for 10 years because I really wanted to get that degree for her, because she was always putting me in the best schools, as I said. And when I got the opportunity to come and observe all these amazing actors work at Guiding Light, I had been around productions in California, but I'd never been around like a family like that, like a unit like that just like put out 250 shows a year and never took off more than a designated week together, and it was just a real thrill to get that chance. And we had an ease pretty quickly. I mean, she was much more nervous. I was a wreck, and she was much more nervous for me because, there she was, knowing that the door had opened for my opportunity as a result of her status on the show. And it was like, if I dropped the ball or failed, it was just going to reflect badly on everybody in the whole family, and so I did okay right away. And then once the comfort level of like, Scott's not going to fall on his face, was done, we laughed, we enjoyed it so much. We shared stories together, outside of the studio about what happened in the studio. We didn't always work the same day.
You have to share what you sort of wrote in the email to me, sort of, hey, Ma, can you stand over there?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have a God announce speaker to the floor from the booth, and I would say, hey, Ma, yeah, kid, can you make that cross one line earlier? Yeah, sure, all right. It was wild, and of course these guys embraced me immediately. I'm a lot like my mom, so maybe I'm easier to embrace on that level. But I mean, I thank you guys so much for making my journey possible and welcoming me, because you're not only beautiful actors, you're great gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, Scott, I do remember that. I remember when you first came on the show to train.
Yeah.
But you were wonderful. I mean, you really were. Everybody would gravitate easily to you. And because we love your mom so much as well, we were hoping you wouldn't fall on your face also. We were,
and the hives would go away.
Yes, that's right. And even though I remember this with your mom, that was really sweet. First Mother's Day.
And the diarrhea problem got cleared up.
The first Mother's Day that came up when I started working with Beverlee was only like 2 months after we started working together, and I brought in like this big bouquet of flowers for her for Mother's Day, even though my character wasn't accepting her yet as a mother. So, and she was just so moved by that, and she made it very clear to me at that time that I was her favorite son. So we've had sibling rivalry ever since. I know, but I just you gotta fuck up, brother. That's
You're gonna really throw Grant right now. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Hey, Jay, did you get to write for Beverlee when you wrote for the show?
Yeah. I only wrote on the show for about a year, and then I was doing Fletcher and Reade. It was about a 3-month overlap on that chore. It was really hard to write. I wasn't I wasn't all in on the writing. I got dragoons, and I was pretty good at it. But God, it was working. It was satisfying artistically, but emotionally it was draining. And I was very relieved to let go of the writing. But while I was doing that, yes, did write some stuff. The thing I remember most, though, is Riva. I don't remember anything specific about Beverlee that I wrote. I did write a real nice thing for Riva that Kim thanked me for over and over again for quite a while. But I don't remember. That was when I was script writing, dialogue writing for Kim. Specifically for Beverlee, I don't recall.
When she jumped off the bridge? Is that when she jumped off the bridge, Riva? I think so.
Before then. It was before then, and I got to thank Kim again because it was those scenes that Fletcher had with Riva. Fletcher was the only character in town that Riva would talk to, and it gave me the leverage for a big contract.
Oh, that's awesome. And
so thank you, Kim.
We were talking backstage. You talked Blondie, calling Beth Blondie, because that was I had this theory about soap operas that every soap opera is a shopping mall, and every character on every soap opera is a shop, a boutique in the shopping mall. You have your police boutique, your lawyer boutique, your banker boutique, your crook boutique. And I was trying to figure out what boutique Fletcher would have to keep customers coming in and getting repeat business. And so I kind of stole from actors I admired at the time to be a bit of a loose cannon and a wiseacre. And I chose to steal a lot of things from other actors, Alan Alda from MASH and Jimmy Cagney from Anything, and
Bill Devane from Knots Landing, when he called a couple of times, I heard him call Donna Mills' character under his breath sarcastically, Blondie, derogatorily. And I went, aha. So I stole that from Bill Devane, and I used it. And they didn't stop me. Or if they tried to stop me, I went, I took that note. And then when it went to tape, I said Blondie anyway, probably.
That's so great. I love that. Scott, your mom, you've mentioned, and I know just from being in PR, she didn't like to do press and really never did. But in the Michael Logan piece, I think she talked about that they wanted her to do Letterman, and she had said no, but she actually regrets that she never did it. Was it just that she was just a private person?
I missed some of the end of that, but
the reason she didn't like to do. Yeah, the reason she didn't like to do press, was it more just she was private?
Yeah,
and
I think she was fine with it as she was starting a role,
Yeah.
But once she felt like she talked about the character, or she talked about her process, or she talked about her experience, she wasn't sure that there was that much more to offer, in a subsequent interview. And she worked a lot. She had a hard schedule.
Alan specifically asked about Letterman, though.
No. I know. Well, I know
Ellen
that she
wanted
turned
to
down.
being in.
Well, I think she turned down Letterman because she didn't know that he was like, who's this, weatherman from Indiana, and she didn't realize the value of it. And whereas when she went on Tom Tomorrow, what's Tom's last name?
Snyder.
She thought. Tom Snyder. She thought she'd gotten on Johnny Carson's show, and that was the bee's knees right there. No, she had a wonderful wit, and I think if she had an opportunity to talk to people, she wanted to give them a laugh, for the articles. There was a time where she felt like she'd been, nitpicked by a magazine or two, where they were like, commenting on her attire, commenting on her look. And there was a time where they were doing that, where like they'd catch you out at a play and they were like, what's she wearing this frumpy set of shoes for, or whatever. And then she would just write them off. She was just like, I will not be answering the phone to that particular magazine ever again. And so, that limited some of her publicity right there.
Yeah, that's true. We missed out though, because just reading the Michael Logan one was, really, and she didn't discuss it with you leaving Guiding Light beforehand. Like she had planned it according to that interview, like for even counting the days backwards to make sure with that scene with Vincent that was it. That was the day before.
I knew about it,
right, but you knew like in June.
I wasn't there.
Yeah,
and she was making plans to actually move out to California, where I was. And she had the ability to retire, and she was looking forward to it. And we had grown so close when I came back to New York for those 6 years that, when I left, it was important for her to sort of maintain our proximity. And so it was a win-win for her. She wanted to stop working, and she wanted to retire and enjoy her retirement, and she wanted to be closer to me. And I was settling in California. But yeah, she swore me to secrecy for sure. My favorite part of that day, though, had to be Jordan Clark, who people were lined up at her dressing room to say goodbye, and they were, expressed their shock and sadness and joy for her and all those good things. And then Jordy, it was his turn to say goodbye, and there were only like 4 dressing rooms in the entire building that had a window out to the street, to grab a smoke or fresh air or anything. And Jordy said, I'm going to miss you, but has anybody asked for your room? Because I really
I got it. I got that room.
There you go. And
Yeah.
and we weren't even big enough to, like, you could lay down from one side of the room to the other and have maybe 5 inches left. They were teeny, but the window was like key.
I know. Yes. And that's why I smoked then too. So it helped me to have that window. That's
there you go.
Jay and Grant, were you at the studio that day when she left?
I was. I walked Beverly down from her dressing room in her dressing gown after she took her costume off, and she got into one of those floor-length robe-like things, and we walked down to the production office, and she said, I'd like to speak to Jill Farron Phelps, please. And the poor little, production assistants went, well, Jill's on vacation and she's not to be disturbed. Well, I wish to speak to her about something. Well, is it important? Well, yes, it is. Well, Jill really needs this vacation. And she says, unless it's an emergency, well, I think she would think this is an emergency. And they said, well, we'll pass it along to Jill and Jill will get back to you and Beverlee said, thank you. Turned and walked out. It was hilarious. I was wetting myself.
You talk about her outfits and at work and her finest boots, and she liked to put on her jewelry or whatever, even if she was coming into dry rehearsal at 7 o'clock in the morning. But she also on stage, as you know, she wore her slippers. You never put on her heels until it was taping. And I saw Katie McLean on set the other day, and she opened up her baggie that I thought was just her own makeup, and there came out the pink slippers, the little flat, 5 and dime Woolworth slippers. And I said, "You New Yorker, what do you call those?" And she goes, "I don't know. They're my slippers." I said, "No, they're nufties. They're called nufties. My mother called them nufties. Jane Elliott called them nufties. You're a New Yorker. Start calling them nufties." And she says, "Oh, all right, good."
That is so funny. Scott, do you know if she ever spoke to Jill? Ever?
Well, yeah, she's in print saying that she tried to reach her in advance, but that Jill
I know that. I mean later, after.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, Jill always likes to dine on the idea that she was blindsided and it was awful, and my mom couldn't be replaced, and what did she ever do to my mom to deserve that? And but I think they were always fine together. I mean, they reached out and got over it. I think Jill didn't appreciate publicly being known as having been blindsided, but I think she was fine.
I wonder if that or Jill's personal assistant got into trouble for not calling, for not interrupting that vacation.
They were just poor little production assistants.
Yeah.
They were scared of the executive producer, more than they were of Beverlee.
Did you, actor gentlemen, start looking at your contracts in new ways after that?
No.
That's a rare clause to have in a contract, that you have 6 weeks to give notice and you have a 6-week vacation. That's very rare. Not a lot of actors have that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bev definitely did, though. She taught me a lot about what was possible. And all of us, here we're fortunate enough to be at the right place at the right time to get characters that writers like to write for. And after you've done it for a while and you're a little burned out, sometimes it's to the show's benefit and your benefit for them to include a couple of things that allow you to get a little bit more rest without compromising the other people in the company. And Beverlee certainly taught me a few creative ways to do that.
Well, just reading that interview, she seemed like she was really burnt out, and that she actually, really thought about what the possibilities she could take to possibly stay, changing things, but it would have meant that it would have affected everybody else. Mm-hmm. And she just really chose to just affect herself and took herself out of the equation, which is a really, bravo move that she was able to do.
I would say that it's interesting because when you're working on that level, the caliber of work that Beverlee did on a regular basis, every day, consistently, and the volume of material, she was always front and center, her character. The entire time that I worked on that show, whether it was as Lujack or Nick McHenry, when I was on there for 5 years, any time that she was on, I think for the first year I was on the show is when she was on there as Nick McHenry. She was always front and center. So every day, 4 or 5 days every week, she had a voluminous amount of material. It was constant. So it made sense that after all those years that she was tired. She was getting burnt out. So I certainly can respect that she felt like it's time for me to turn the page, go somewhere else, So I respect that, sure.
It's true. You know, one of our fans, Luther, had reached out to me knowing that I was doing this episode, that he would love to personally help get Beverlee recognized by the Academy. And I know, Grant, you at one time, right, wrote a letter to the Academy. Do you want to share a little of that?
Sure. I dug it off the hard drive here.
The floppy disk?
Yeah, the floppy disk. Really. You know, I
don't say floppy to a man my age.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point, Jay. Pop a little blue pill. I don't even remember when this was, to tell you the truth. This is probably eight years ago, 10. I don't know, but it was somebody named Brent.
Luther wasn't the only person. There's I think another Alan had reached out to me today. A lot of people just really, feel strongly how Beverlee should be recognized by the Academy. And it's true.
This was for that. And I certainly was not the only voice. There were a lot of people that felt this way and still do feel this way. But this was my effort at it. Dear Brent, ask anyone who ever worked with Beverlee McKinsey to describe the experience, and the first words you will hear are, "What a pro." They will be preceded or followed by an intake of breath and a look of wonderment and awe. You may also see a hint of fear and an instinctive glance over the shoulder as though she might still be floating around somewhere, poised to strike. Bev could scare you. She had that kind of talent. She had the ability to play anything and could shift emotional gears so swiftly and seamlessly it could make your head spin. Not only that, she could do a mountain of material. Blessed with an incredible memory and a work ethic second to none, Bev would show up each Monday with the upcoming week's scripts already committed to memory. She would learn them back to front, starting with Friday's show first and ending with Monday. She would carry her script in rehearsal hall in the morning, but she rarely needed it. I often thought it was just an act of kindness to make the rest of us slackers feel a bit less conspicuous. One of the first things the show learns about a performer is whether or not they can carry story. Well, Bev could not only carry her story, she could throw others on her back and carry them as well. That's why after she took Another World to the top of the ratings, they created a whole new show to spin off around her character. I learned so much from Beverlee, most of it without even being aware of the lesson, much the way a child is unaware of the vegetables tucked away in the spaghetti sauce. It would go something like this. Bev would sigh and sit back on the couch in between dress rehearsal and tape and casually tell a story in the time before the director would come out with notes. She'd say, "I remember once on Another World, I was working with an actress who felt she had to win every scene. Even when the intent of the writer was clearly otherwise, she'd stand at the door after my character had one-upped her and give me a little self-satisfied smirk before exiting. It got to be a problem because all the scenes ended up looking the same and we were boring people to tears. Finally, I went to her dressing room and I told her, 'Look, honey, this is a war you're going to win. But if I don't win a few battles along the way, we don't have a story.' She would somehow always finish these stories just as the director would rejoin us on stage, taking the onus off the actor with the averted eyes for whom the story was intended to be a lesson. I know, more than once I was the actor staring at my shoes. But that was Bev. It was all about the story. She had the ability to upstage anybody, anytime, but she was old school. She planted her feet, said her lines as written, and trusted her talent to tell the story. She was simply magnificent. If you ask a baseball fan to pick one player with which to start a new team, they will pick the best pitcher in the game, because a great pitcher changes the game. If I had only one actor with which to start a new show, it would be Beverlee, hands down, because she changed the game. She made everybody better. And I think I was nominated for an Emmy 3 or 4 times. And every time, Beverlee would call me and say, "Congratulations, are you excited?" To which I would always reply, "Well, they haven't given you one yet, have they?" She would laugh, and the native Oklahoma would come out a little in her voice, and she would slowly reply, "Well, no, they haven't." Everybody knows that awards are funny things, often selected in arbitrary ways. And Bev would be the first to tell you that the notion of a singular award for a collaborative process is flawed from the start. But if we're going to have such things, and we fail to recognize people like Beverlee, we take the shine off the whole damn thing. Of course, I got no reply.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
No response.
That's awful. But thank you, Jill Laurie Hurst, for reminding me that Grant wrote that letter, because Grant, that was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, she was just so amazing, and in keeping with everything else that's been said, and I'm sure people have noticed a pattern. Bev never acted like she was better than anybody else. She never asked for anything special. She had this power and this force, that she was so talented and so smart and so disciplined and just a pro in every way, that nobody would even think about trying to cross Bev. You wouldn't know where to start. She just, she covered all the bases. She was just amazing, and as good a friend as you could ever possibly have.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I miss her laugh, especially. Yeah. She had such a beautiful laugh. It was so unique. I can still hear it to this day, and her voice. She had a very unique, very specific voice. And I miss that immensely. And
she was funny as hell, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was.
God, she was so funny.
I mean, Jay said she was the only actor who opened her door with the panties. I mean, come on.
It must have been a day that Warren wasn't at work, obviously.
Actually, Warren's dressing room was right across the hall from hers, Yeah.
But he had the
it was from Beverly's side of the hallway, not Warren's side of the hallway.
That's funny.
What was her take, or from your perspective, on scripted daytime material?
She never said a line differently than it was written, ever, that I was aware of. And she'd make everything work, which was half the battle. As I the actors will tell you in the room versus me, it's making something truthful that might be too much of a headline or not really true to the character. I think she was a writer's friend. She always said the words.
I still don't know how she did it, Scott. I still don't know how she did
it. You mean saying it word for word, Grant?
Yeah, because she's the only actor that I've ever known that I worked with, certainly in daytime, maybe any. Well, no, you're doing theater, you're saying the lines because somebody spent a lot of time writing them. But particularly in daytime, and this is not a knock against the writers. Nobody has enough time to do their job in daytime. So I certainly changed a lot of words, and most everybody I ever worked with did as well. But Bev never had to, and for that I will be eternally jealous.
and Grant, it's fair to say that one of the things that are obstacles for you guys is that each day's script, Alan, is a different writer. Yeah. So yesterday's voice is that it was given a character is not necessarily today's voice. And yes, they have a show editor, and yes, they have a head writer. But I mean, there's so much work being done continuously that each writer doesn't have a chance to check in with the last script, the next script. They're writing their own material, and then they're worried about what they have to do a week from now, or deliver a week from now. So anyway,
and then you guys have to deal with the nightmare of having actors changing things that affect your cuts, which of course I never paid any attention to until I started sitting in your seat. I had a lot of directors to call and apologize to.
Yeah, Grant's script was always a little bit beaten up when you brought it into dry rehearsal. Just a little mangled,
But it is amazing because Beverly literally worked with every male on that show: Chris Bernoff, Jay, Vincent, Grant, Jordan, Larry. I mean, every single, and every woman too. I mean, I just watched something of her and Reva today, and her and, that first scene that she enters into the country club is with Vanessa, when Vanessa introduces herself. I mean, your mom worked with everybody, and just, the show was so much better for her being a part of it. It really, we all, I was lucky because I was a fan before I ever worked there, Scott, and I did meet your mom, and I'm sure I was nervous as SHIT outside, 26th Street meeting, Beverlee McKinsey for the first time.
It's a great shot. You just shared it the other day.
Yeah.
Online. That's a great shot.
You know, some fans were asking, what was your mom like at home?
My mom was a great mom. You know, she made plans to travel and made sure that, you know, we went out to films and theater, and if she couldn't make it to the play, she put me in a cab and sent me to the play. You got to see this actor. She came to every Little League baseball game I ever played and stayed in the stands and cheered, you know, and you know, slide, Scott, slide on the way home. She was a very active mom, and she was my best friend. She was we were very simpatico and on the same track very quickly, and shared a lot of laughter and a lot of fun. I miss her a ton. Yeah.
I bet. I mean, I know you know, mom, I think a lot of us are without mom, so I get that. Did I miss anything, guys? Anything you wanted to share about Beverlee that I may have missed? I want to read like just her response to one of Michael Logan's questions before we leave, because I think it just, you know, it sort of describes what you've been talking about with her. Did I miss anything? Anybody? No? Okay. So
no.
So Logan had asked, but Beverlee, realistically, no BS. Now, who the hell can replace you? And your mom says, if they hire some blonde bimbo with a cute little nose, they're going to be making a big mistake. They just need to hire a good actress. It doesn't matter if she's 5'11" with black hair. Replacements on Guiding Light have been an enormous success in my time there. And this one will be too. They'll look back a year from now and wonder what in the world they were so angry and upset about. You know, I mean, she, you know, she didn't realize, you know, I don't think she realized, you know, looking at today's show and everybody who's tuning in today, your mom is sorely missed. Your mom was sorely loved. And I appreciate you all for being here today.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
Thank you so much.
Well, first I want to say something in reading the quote. I mean, obviously, they went in that direction as she had envisioned with Marge.
With a great actress.
With a great actress. It wasn't somebody that was, they were trying to replicate the look of Beverlee. And as I've always said, Marge Ducey coming in and taking over that role, that was a Herculean task by every definition. And she did a brilliant job. She really did. And I adored both of them. I really did. And
100%. But that you know, that's, I think that's also saying something about the magic of Guiding Light, because the same thing for Chris Burnett. I mean, no one would have thought somebody could come in and take on that role, and Ron Raines did it beautifully.
Fantastic.
Right. Really Grant, don't you agree, Grant?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, Bev hit the nail on the head, and echoed by Vince, that if you try to produce a carbon copy or go for just a look, you've sunk yourself from the beginning. You know, go get another original that will make the character their own. And I certainly with Betty Ray and with casting people that followed on Guiding Light, that's always what they tried to do.
Absolutely.
I wanted to echo the Betty Ray mentioned. Her work was so amazing, so stellar,
right?
And she found people that, as the world turns, stole, and you know, she would go to universities and you know, down to Louisville for you know, annual theater productions. To find new talent, and she was absolutely the best, Betty Ray.
She cast the three of you, correct?
Yeah, she cast me.
Betty should have won an Emmy.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They weren't doing casting Emmys back then, though.
No.
But she would have absolutely.
But they should have given her a special award. All the people she discovered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
That actually, somebody, I'm sure now, you know, the fans paying attention today, Betty Ray definitely deserves.
Yeah. And she was a chorus girl on Broadway. She was the Broadway baby back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, Betty acted herself?
Yeah, she was a chorus girl.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, before I forget, Wendy says happy birthday, Jay. One of our fans said happy birthday. Karen said
Thank
happy
you.
birthday. Happy birthday, Vincent. I know your birthday was last week. Hope you had a
Yes.
great birthday.
Happy birthday, Jay.
Happy birthday, Vinny.
Scott,
Happy
Scott,
birthday.
thank you for letting us, remember your mom.
Thank you so much.
I hope
Also,
you enjoyed
Scott,
it.
Before Alan, real quick, Scott.
Yeah.
I know there's a book being written about your mother now, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes, and I did mean to ask. Go ahead, Scott.
You may want to say something about
Yeah.
I was approached 2 or 3 years ago by an author and a university instructor who works in women's studies.
Patrick Dilley. Patrick Dilley.
And he asked, he was a fan, but he was also a real admirer of what he perceived to be her path, and he was very curious to learn more about that and to have the opportunity to write about her path in life and the era she lived in and being a self-made person, and so he's writing it, and he's done a lot of interviews, and he's interviewed everybody here, and I'm really looking forward to the work. And it's not so much an homage, or any kind of a tabloid piece whatsoever. It's really about a young girl growing up in a poor little town and finding her way. So I think she'd be very proud of that. She would not have sought to have anything published like that. And I think it's something that I'm going to be very proud of, and it will be a good remembrance, a good legacy for her.
I know Patrick couldn't watch it live. I reminded him yesterday that we were doing this because Scott had asked me if any quotes from this could be used in there, and I said absolutely. But he's gonna be watching tonight, and as soon as
he's teaching right now, so
And as soon as we know when it's coming out, I will be sure to get Patrick and share it with everybody. So
I can give you one suggestion I had for the title, which the guys will like. My mom didn't believe in being buried. She asked to be cremated, and I said, well, if you change your mind, I know what you have to put on your tombstone, on your gravesite. And she said, what? And I said, you're standing in my light. She said, oh my God, I may have to change my mind. I said, if I could just have like a GoPro at the gravesite and watch people like jump backwards, and look over their shoulder at the light that they're standing in.
You're saying that's for sure. That's so funny.
That is great.
Awesome.
I love
It's
that.
nice to spend another day with Beverlee.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you all doing this, and stay healthy. And I'll sign off, and we can say goodbye in a second. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.